Hey, I'm co-chair of the Goose Creek Association, and I'm specifically chair for the Fauquier County aspect of Goose Creek Association. I've been with Goose Creek since 2007 and chair for the last 7 years of the Fauquier aspect. So that's it. Next. We're dedicated to protecting and preserving the environment and quality of life in the Goose Creek watershed in Fauquier and Loudoun counties, Virginia. We've been organized for over 50 years. We just celebrated that last year, last fall. And we've preceded most of the area environmental organizations, including the PEC, from which many of the other organizations grew. I recently added this because when I came to New York several years ago at the antique fair, I saw this huge map, and this is just a portion of it, but it drew my attention. And I looked closer and closer, and what did I see? It's in 1755, there is the Goose Creek that I circled, most of it there. And so I was gobsmacked. We are clearly a very important part of the Piedmont's history, but all of this, also of this country's history. And this was labeled the most important map in American history from 1755, and there we are on it. So that's demonstrated proof that way back when, the Goose Creek was acknowledged as being an important part of the United States. Next. The Goose Creek Bridge is a preserved historic Civil War bridge off of Route 50. That's very important. And this map of the Goose Creek watershed shows you the extent of it. We start down in Linden near what is now Route 66, and we move northeast, east of Leesburg, coming out at the Potomac at Lansdowne. And we represent over 54 miles of water, as well as over 200 and some miles of watershed of the Potomac River and the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We are a source water for the Potomac Bay watershed. We were established, the association, in 1970 as a result of concerned neighbors because there was a development scheduled on the Goose Creek in Fauquier County off of Crenshaw Road that would have distributed effluent directly into the Goose Creek. So some of you may remember that the 1970s was when the nascent environmental movement took off and the first Earth Day occurred. And so Goose Creek is coincident with that beginning. We have over 600 members strong in both Loudoun and Fauquier counties, representing the Goose Creek watershed. And we have an extremely active board of directors and many dedicated volunteers who make our work possible. Next. Our major programs are stream monitoring and training. We do both benthic and chemical monitoring, and later Jeff Millington will tell you about that, and Norm Meyer. We have a Goose Creek Challenge program of planting riparian buffer plants with mostly high school, but other middle school as well as adult volunteers, typically in the spring, but it's been expanding into the fall as well, as this particular activity is really taking off. We have education and outreach, including showing of documentary movies. Coming up is a movie entitled 2040 on Valentine's Day weekend. You can register by going to our website, www.goosecreek.org. It's a fascinating British movie about a father's wishes for his daughter who's growing up and will be a young person in 2040 using existing alternative energy technologies. It's really a great uplifting movie. And then we also have activism, and my co-chair Paul Lawrence later will introduce you to that. If not, I'll add to it. Those of us who are reformed lawyers like to get up there and expound on what our Board of Supervisors are supposed to be doing according to the ordinances and other governing documents for the counties. And so we get up and remind them of what their duty is over and over and over again. And we've been fairly successful. Very specifically, most recently in Loudoun County, we had an unprecedented win in helping the board to overturn the Goose Creek Overlook development, which was proposed along the upper Goose Creek. Next. Jeff, you want to explain our benthic stream monitoring program? You have to.
Very much so. My name is Jeff Millington. I've been with the Goose Creek not as long as Lori, but I have been with it for over 10 years. And my wife and I have been monitoring for the last 7 or 8 years and enjoy it very much. And I'm the coordinator for the Benthic programs. And if we can get down to the slides, are we going to go into my slides now, or are we going to?
We're going to wait, Jeff. Let's let Lori finish, and we'll come
Okay.
back to you. Okay, just a teaser.
So you'll know everything by the time I get through.
So Lori, you're still on.
Back in 2000, when Goose Creek was designated as impaired by the Department of Environmental Quality in Virginia, a stream monitoring program was started by the Goose Creek Association. So we've been doing it for over 20 years. And it started out as both a benthic and chemical monitoring program using volunteers. And it has progressed where the volunteers continue to do the benthic monitoring on 14 sites throughout the Goose Creek watershed, although it's mostly in the lower part of the watershed, with LWC taking on the mantle for the upper watershed. And so that was the beginning, and it's been around as long as the water's been impaired. Chemical water monitoring, we decided to ratchet it up to a level 3 standard of chemical monitoring in 2021, where we work with the Friends of the Shenandoah River to do specific chemical monitoring that will be accepted by Virginia DEQ as if they themselves did it. And we have at least 6 sites, and I know LWC has adding sites. In this way, we can be very specific on a monthly basis that's consistent and demonstrates the status of the water. Next. There you can see the current stream sites that we have and the locations. We go all the way, they're a little bit out of order. For some reason, the number, site 3, Fiery Run in Markham, is there. And then we go up the creek towards Leesburg. We don't have the chemical sites, but we'll tell you about them. We did a report card with the Friends of the Rappahannock River using their methodology. This is our second report card. We had one in 2014, and then we just had this one produced. And unfortunately, Goose Creek is still not only impaired, but gets an overall C grade for various aspects of reporting. A C for the human health aspect of the watershed, a C+ for land use, because of all the conservation easements that have occurred over time in the watershed, and then a C again for a stream ecology, which takes into account the various stream monitoring reports. I don't know about you, but I was never satisfied with a C. Next. So we have a program that started a little while ago, within 10 years, and that's called the Goose Creek Challenge. And it's chaired by Delaney Morrison, our active board member, and he orchestrates plantings primarily in the spring. I'll speak a little bit more at length about this, but because Delaney, I don't believe, is on this call. Delaney organizes with the John Marshall Soil and Water District and with the Loudoun County Soil and Water Districts stream plantings of native species from grasses to shrubs to trees along the watershed, where landowners will allow us to come in and where they commit not to have cattle. You can see the kind of damage that occurs on this part of the stream bed. It may be a picture I took near Rectortown at Milan Mill. And it's just really horrible what happens when the cattle sort of eat away all the vegetation, and then there's nothing to hold the ground in place when the waters come rushing through, and also nothing to filter the water. So this is a very hands-on project that is spreading throughout our county and throughout with our partners like the PEC to get corps of people out there to do this kind of planting. And it's just amazing the difference in the water. We've done it on our own farm and the farm next to us where there's cattle. It looks like a desert, and then you come to our farm and frankly, you can't even see the water anymore, which might not make some people happy because there's so much vegetation on either side of it. and the water is crystal clear. I'm not sure how it's testing in terms of E. coli, but it's crystal clear because of the plantings that we have done along our portion of the water. Next. Okay, the challenge was established in 2012, so we're in our 10th year, and we've planted trees on 19 farms, and most recently at Sky Meadow in conjunction with the PEC. We worked with over 900 students and volunteers. A huge portion of this is education. We explain to the students why it's important to plant here, and also why we're planting only native species and not invasive species, so that the roots can go deeper and be better filters for the water. We've planted along 8 miles of stream bed and over 12,000 plus trees. That's significant, but we still have a long way to go. And we're working feverishly with our various partners like We Plant Trees and BEC and the Friends of the Rappahannock to do even more every year. Next. You can see the photos of the happy warriors here. It's frankly back-breaking work. So I'm so happy to have all these high schoolers out there and not me. I've done it. It's really tough. The riparian buffers, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can see on the left what a great riparian buffer looks like. Lots of plantings along the stream. The bad, you have the trees falling over with all the sediment attached to it that will go downstream with that tree. And the ugly shows you again where there's just not much there other than a few scruffy trees, and the cattle have pretty much worn it down and are wearing it out. Next. We also do an annual stream cleanup. Our wonderful Marvin Watts, board member, organizes this delightfully in the spring or fall, depending on the weather. And it's a wonderful way to get together and literally clean up the litter from the Goose Creek. It's amazing what people throw in there, particularly those huge, ugly rubber tires and all the garbage. But frankly, it's a wonderful way to enjoy the Goose Creek. Most of the Goose Creek shoreline is on private property. So this is a way for us to see it with the permission of landowners. We get in and then we get out maybe 2 to 3 miles downstream and have a wonderful lunch thereafter. So join us this spring. We're aiming for May. Again, go to our website and sign up and we'll send you out information on it. But frankly, I've done 2 or 3 of these and I think it's a wonderful way to enjoy the Goose Creek. Next. Education and outreach. Every year we sponsor local students at local nature camps, as well as at Virginia Tech. And we also have showings. As I said, we have an environmental movie to be shown over Valentine's Day 2040. I think you'll all enjoy it. We're showing it for free. If you'd like to donate, we'd love that too. But we do these for free because we want to help educate the public about the environment. And the picture there is of a very significant neighbor, Dr. Ellen Stoffen, who's now the Vice President for Science and Technology of the Smithsonian Institution and has been a presidential advisor at NASA and at the Air and Space Museum. She gave a wonderful talk on what we can learn about Earth from space. It was wonderful, but it was also quite alarming, I have to say, about what could happen. Her particular specialty is one of the moons of Saturn, and we could turn into sort of a miasma of poisonous gases if we don't turn things around.
Don't look up.
Yeah, and look up, right. Next, next. This fall, we had a wonderful celebration for our 50th anniversary. It was so wonderful. People said, oh, are you going to do it next year? No, we might do it in 5 years or maybe 50 years, but it was wonderful. We had all these folks come out and a lot of families in the area. And we had various organizations demonstrating their wares. We had an owl, a lady who showed various raptors. And we also had face painting for the really little ones. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience for us. And we also had an art show for people with the theme on the Goose Creek. It was really a lot of fun. In advocacy, again, we do advocate throughout our counties for special purchase programs, conservation easements, and best management practices. Again, it's like whack-a-mole. You know, we have to keep reminding our supervisors whom we've elected to represent us to do the right thing. They seem to be getting the message, particularly in Fauquier and increasingly in Loudoun, and we're really thrilled with that, but we have to keep at it because developers are keeping at it too, and they won't stop. I'd like to announce that this year, in conjunction with Downstream Project and with the Friends of the Shenandoah River and the Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy, we've launched this new program called the Goose Creek Watch program. And it is, will document online in a real-time as well as live, I believe, capacity to show what the status of the river is at various sites on the Goose Creek. So if you wanted to take your kayak or canoe out, you could go onto our website, click on one of our monitoring stations near to where you think you'll be, and you can see what we think is the status of the river. And I'll let Norm tell you a little bit more about that later. Next. And I believe that's it. So I turn it over to my more in-depth colleagues, Jeff Millington and Norm Myers.
Here I am.
Lori, we're going to go to the Friends of the Shenandoah River now, and then come back to Jeff and Amy.
Okay, I also want to add.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Norm, go ahead. You can fill in.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was involved in reviewing the general plan for Loudoun County in about 2017 and 18 in conjunction with the Loudoun County Coalition. And I learned at that time that the Goose Creek is labeled as an impaired river. And I already knew it was a state designated scenic river. So my question was, what is anybody doing about this impairment? I don't think we want to be impaired, right, Lori? I mean, a C, that's even below C. And the plan acknowledged impaired streams. Many stream segments across the county have been designated as impaired by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. There is a policy in the Stream and River Corridor Resource Policy 2. The county will protect natural ecosystems, restore water quality, serve Loudoun's population, and support the built environment through healthy surface and groundwater resources. And they plan to do this by collaborating with the DEQ, Goose Creek Scenic River Advisory, stakeholders, and so forth. Fortunately, we're not still waiting for them to do something about it. So in the meantime, I started working with the Goose Creek Association, and we started a project called the Goose Creek Watch. And our goal is to change the status from impaired to healthy. Our motivations including wanting to conserve natural resources and wildlife, to provide opportunities for recreation, and to maintain a healthy source of drinking water. And Loudoun Water, by the way, gets a lot of its water from the Goose Creek. So it would certainly be to their benefit. We have reached out and talked to them, and they've been helpful. We hope to get them on board a little more. So our first step in the process of setting up Goose Creek Watch was to contact Karen Anderson of the Friends of the Shenandoah River to start a sample collection of and conduct a chemical analysis at their facilities at Shenandoah University. And Karen will talk more about her role next. We were successful in agreeing on key issues and regularity. This is a monthly testing to identify sources of undesirable runoff and pollution. We also agree that Karen would provide training to our staff, more specifically Matthew Frost, who is our first river steward and an employee of Goose Creek Association. The GCA and Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy have already been doing benthic testing, which Jeff and Amy will talk about later. The Conservancy has agreed to partner with us by sharing their data. And finally, Bill Howard has agreed to help coordinate the test results and map them using Water Reporter, which is housed on our website. Bill will tell you more about that later. Downstream, excuse me. junk call. Downstream is making in-kind donation of their time and resources for the first year of the project. And Friends of the Shenandoah River is making a partial donation of their time and effort. Goose Creek Watch became a work in progress and started taking on a life of its own. As we became able to articulate our goals and methods, we wrote a press release and spread the word through our network of partner conservation organizations. We were successful in gaining in-kind donations from our partners, pledges from individuals, and foundation grants, including the Backer Foundation, and our largest grant so far, $20,000 from Google. We've also been contacted by other organizations, including the Dulles Greenway, Oak Spring Garden Foundation, the Confluence Park at the mouth of the Goose Creek, and the Goose Creek Scenic Advisory Committee, Loudoun Water, and the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin. Our intent is to continue to gather partners and information, obtain grants to expand the number of test sites, continue to collect data for mapping and analysis. We're not just going to analyze the data, but as Lori pointed out, we will help to develop and provide programs to remediate based on the findings. We know that agricultural practices have a negative impact on water. We've identified resources that can help with those issues, and they're willing to pledge some of their own resources to help. We have been supporting and promoting riparian buffers with tree planting projects, including in conjunction with the PEC. We also realize that runoff from prior developments cause problems. We'll be able to work with and provide objective data and criteria to support controlling runoff from existing developments, as well as be able to comment on future plan development. Our goal is to restore Goose Creek to a healthy state. So there we go. That's my presentation. Hopefully with the overview, and I'll turn it over to Karen and then Jeff and Amy to explain their roles in it.
Next slide, please. Hi, welcome. I'm Karen Anderson. I'm the Laboratory and Program Director for the Friends of the Shenandoah River, which is a nonprofit organization. Next slide. In 1989, a group of people with a common interest, their love for the Shenandoah River, came together. Concerned about the river's degradation and lack of awareness about the river, they had an idea. Next slide, please. Combine the forces of sound science and volunteers to monitor the river's health, and then share the story the science was telling throughout the valley. Knowledge, they said, is power. Thus, the Friends of the Shenandoah River, also known as FOSR, was formed. Next slide. Today, FOSR operates and maintains a reputable water quality testing laboratory and citizen science-driven water quality monitoring programs. Understanding the importance of the work that FOSR provides, then Dr. James Davis, president of Shenandoah University, and Dr. Woody Bousquet, chair of the Environmental Studies program at the time, championed the allocation of space on SU's campus for the FOSR to house our water quality testing facility. This image is the first space that we had at Shenandoah University. It was a converted storage closet. And as you can see from this photo, we quickly outgrew this space. And one afternoon, Dr. Davis walked down the hallway, and the testing, not necessarily the testing, but the cleaning, which uses a lot of bleach and acid, gave off strong smells. We had no hood in this room. And Dr. Davis walked down the hall and he boastfully said, "What is that smell?" And I sheepishly walked out into the hallway and said, "That's us." And he said, "You need a bigger room and a hood." And so with the wheels turning, go ahead, next slide. We have been given a larger lab space, which I am sitting in right now. Next slide. Since its conception, the FOSR's water quality testing program has grown from a basement operation to a Virginia Department of Environmental Quality Level 3 and NELAC accredited laboratory. Next slide. Most of the FOSR's water quality data submitted to Virginia DEQ conforms to the Level 3 criteria, allowing it to be used for the listing of impaired waters that exceed water quality standards, or the delisting of previously impaired waters that no longer exceeds those water quality standards that had deemed them to be impaired. Next slide. In addition, the FOSR's level 3 accreditation status allows the data generated to be used at face value without further testing being necessary, saving vital resources, including remediation response, which is very important, manpower, and money. These data that are provided to DEQ complements and expands DEQ's available information relating to the health of the rivers and tributaries in Virginia. Next slide. The Friends of the Shenandoah River have some long-standing water quality monitoring programs, one of which is heading into its 33rd year this year, and that is our long-term volunteer citizen science water quality monitoring program of the Shenandoah River and its tributary. Next slide. Also, one of our growing long-term programs is our summer E. coli testing program on the main stem South Fork, North Fork of the Shenandoah River and on the Opacan Creek. In 2019, Virginia's Water Quality Control Board removed the water quality standard for a single ambient freshwater grab sample that's E. coli concentration exceeded the maximum threshold of 235 colony forming units for that water sample. If exceeded, this standard would have triggered notification to the public of potential exposure to elevated E. coli levels. As a result of this legislative change, Virginia no longer has a single sample instantaneous criteria that would trigger public notification of elevated E. coli levels that could pose potential health risk. However, through this program, the Friends of the Shenandoah River does provide this important information. Since the COVID pandemic, there has been a significant increase in the use of public freshwater access areas. There is the possibility that pathogens that are dangerous to human health are present in these waters. These pathogens come from agricultural practices, overland runoff, dated and failing septic systems, and overwhelmed wastewater treatment facilities. There is the increased awareness of the importance of one's overall health in avoiding situations that may tax our immune systems. The community has come to rely on these weekly E. coli concentration result updates from the FOSR's annual summer E. coli testing program in helping them to make informed decisions about potential health risks when visiting our fresh waterways. One of the programs that the Friends hope to is expand this E. coli monitoring into other watersheds in Virginia with satellite labs that are managed by the FOSR and governed under our accredited SOPs, standard operating procedures. The FOSR manages and houses the data collected from its water quality monitoring programs and projects. This expansive database value increases with the length of the record and is a tool crucial to understanding and resolving critical water quality issues plaguing many of Virginia's rivers and streams. Once a year, the water quality data generated by us, the FOSR, is delivered to Virginia DEQ, which in turn includes this data into the Water Quality Assessment Integrated Report that is delivered to the US EPA. Next slide, please. In addition to our Keystone long-term programs, we collaborate with state and local agencies, environmental groups, schools, civic groups, and others to implement water quality monitoring programs, to provide educational outreach programs, and to provide internship opportunities. Listed here are a few of our collaborative programs that we are involved in. Two of the longest standing ones is the summer E. coli testing program at Lake Holiday. The other one is our collaboration with the Blue Ridge Watershed Coalition, which is also a partner of the BRCA. And this program's been going on for going into its 15th year this year. A new program that we will be launching this year is with the Eastern Panhandle Conservation District in West Virginia for a study of the Back Creek watershed. And another collaboration is with the Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy, securing clean drinking water for the Luckett's community. I'm really excited about this partnership with Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy and the offerings the program will provide or offer to the community of Luckett's. Next slide, please. One of these exciting collaborative partnerships is the launch of the Goose Creek Association and Friends of Shenandoah River multi-phase chemical and bacterial water quality monitoring program. Next slide. The goals and objectives of phase 1 of this collaboration are to develop and implement a science-driven chemical and bacterial water quality monitoring program that meets Virginia DEQ's Tier 3 criteria. Select 6 sites or site locations that build upon and complement the monitoring being done by Virginia DEQ and offers a balanced cross-section of the water quality in the watershed. Next slide. Provide benchmark data from a macro view of the overall Goose Creek watershed that could signal potential stressors within the watershed and highlights areas of high water quality. And then to showcase these data on the Goose Creek Association website via the Water Reporter in collaboration with the Downstream and other social media platforms. All of these have been set in motion with the first water quality monitoring event that occurred in August of 2021 and each month since, with the most recent a week ago. So the next couple of slides I'd like to share with you are some of the highlights from sites that I visit monthly and collect the data and do in situ monitoring. And then the samples are taken back to the Friends of the Shenandoah lab, where Molly and I, my lab assistants, do analysis on these samples. So next slide. I'd like to start at the headwaters of Goose Creek. These are some pictures showing the progression of the seasons here at this site. One of the things, so the site where I collect is off of Fiery Run Road. And one of the potential stressors to the site, it hasn't been identified, is directly upstream is a horse boarding facility. And adjacent to the creek on the other side are a small farm that has some goats and sheep and a couple of other animals that I've noticed there. So let's go to the next slide. So when we launched the program, we didn't expect to find issues right out of the gate. But soon, to our surprise, we did find some issues at several of the sites. What I'd like to draw your attention to in this slide of data, or a graph of data, is the dotted red line across. That line is that 235 standard that I referenced earlier that Virginia Water Quality Board decided to drop. But being advocates and spokespeople for the Goose Creek watershed, the Goose Creek Association has decided to use this standard as the goal, where we'd like the water quality to be. So I'm showing where the 235 line falls and the data points that we've collected since the start of the project. One of the interesting things is this last data point. If you could point to that last, the 461, yes, this I collected 1 week ago when the water temperature was 36 degrees. I've since done some research, and in the past I've looked into this too. E. coli, while it can survive at very cold temperatures, does not reproduce and has a shortened life period of about 2 days. So this number of 461 in 36-degree water indicates to me that there is an ongoing fresh supply of fecal matter that is being contributed to the water. Another significant thing that I would like to share with you all is August, September, October, even the one at the beginning of November, we were in a drought. The water level was extremely low, and so the flow was low. So those could represent concentration numbers, highly concentrated E. coli numbers. What would be interesting to do would be to compare the flows to find out if the 461 contributed more E. coli to the entire watershed than that 2,419 did back in November, where the flow was much lower. Next slide. This site is on the Goose Creek, just downstream of the confluence with the North Fork. Again, some pictures to show the progression of the seasons collecting. Go ahead to the next slide. And here's the E. coli plotted at this site. Again, up until this last collection in January, the numbers were well below the 235. Then when I collected in January, the E. coli was high and exceeded that 235 goal. The water level was higher and rushing. So again, concerns about consistent E. coli being flushed into Goose Creek during more elevated flow levels. Now, this last slide I'd like to share with you, go ahead, next one, is on an unnamed tributary that feeds into Sleater Lake. And at this point, I'd like for Amy and Norm and Jeff to also chime in, and Lori, you also, because we're all working together at this site, and you'll understand in just a moment when you see the E. coli numbers. Again, when we launched this project, we didn't expect to find immediate issues that brought us to the table and had immediate discussions and, okay, what do we do next? However, this site brought us around quickly to, okay, what do we do next? And Norm was very quick to reach out to people in the Round Hill town council to open up and start discussions. So let's go ahead and take a look at the E. coli numbers at this site. I want to pull your attention to the left, to the scale on the left. Notice that the highest number is 26,000. Yep, that is 26,000 E. coli's. The highest measurement that I measured there was 24,196, and that was in September. Now, I'd like to let you know that the Round Hill Town Council, once this was brought to their attention, not knowing much about our organizations, they contracted with an outside lab, a commercial lab, to do some monitoring to confirm, was this really happening? Did were these E. coli numbers factual? And I am pleased and proud to announce that the numbers that this outside commercial lab coincided almost exactly with what we were reporting. So that is a gold star to this effort. Since then, I have been talking with the Round Hill Town Council and have been providing them with our data to let them know what's going on. And you will notice that this site in January had one of the lowest E. coli readings. It is the first time that it dropped below that 235 line. I just want to briefly talk for 1 second about what Round Hill Town Council is assuming. I'm going to use the word assuming for this discussion. There are 2 trees right along the tributary, right where I collect my samples, that are the roosting for migratory black vultures. And we are talking, let's put it this way. When I went out with Amy to take a look at this site in October and November, the area around these trees, it looked like it had snowed. It was white with feces from the vultures. So I am in agreement with the town council's assumption that the vultures are contributing to the accelerated or exceedingly high E. coli levels. However, it doesn't explain what I've seen in August, that 2,400, because at that time, the birds had not migrated into the area. So it will be interesting to see the progression at this site, what we see as the seasons and time passes. Norm or Amy or Jeff, would you like to add anything?
I think you've covered it from my perspective.
I think you covered it very well, Karen. Thank you.
All right. And the final slide, please. And if that's a video on the left, if you want to just click it real quick. I'd like to thank, that's me last week out there in the water. I'd like to thank everybody for this opportunity. I'd like to reach out and thank the Goose Creek Association for this fantastic collaboration and all of the funders and contributors who have made this possible. And Bill, thank you very much for your services to get this data out there to the public and all that are interested. That's it from me.
Excellent.
Jeff, you're muted.
Excellent, Karen. Thank you very much. Jeff, you're up.
I'm up. This is Jeff Millington again. And all I can say is, my God, looking at that picture of Karen sitting in the middle of that stream with the snow. I mean, you know, I've been doing Benthic monitoring for 6 years now, 8 years now, and I've never, have to admit, I've never gone through anything like that in my life. So congratulations to you, Karen. I'm forever in your stead here. It's just wonderful. Listen, I just want to spend a couple of minutes just expanding a bit on what Lori talked about, is the Goose Creek Benthic monitoring program. And I want to pick up on a point which she mentioned, and that this is one of our major programs. We have been doing this for 20 years, and it remains a major focus of our efforts. And then now we are folding it into the Goose Creek Watch in our broadened efforts to protect the quality of the water in the Goose Creek Association and the Goose Creek watershed. It is a tremendously important program for us, and we're delighted that we're moving ahead with it now, especially in cooperation with so many other people. If we could take a look at the next slide. There we are. When you think about Benthic monitoring, this is what you think about, and it's just adorable. You know, here's a mother and daughter. They're out there. They're doing a little Benthic monitoring. Just wonderful. We'll skip the fact the daughter's in sandals, but that's neither here nor there. If we can go to the next slide. But as important as the monitors are, the real stars of this program are the bugs. This is who we monitor. This is who we deal with. And these bugs are the ones that make the Benthic monitoring program possible. And how do they do that? And if anyone wants to talk about which bugs are in there, you got little leeches over there, you've got clams up there, you got some beetles over there, net spinners. Anyway, they're all over the place. We look at actually 16 or 17 of them when we go out. Next slide, please. And the role of the bugs, it's the way I would explain it, it's really like talking to the residents of a neighborhood. And just think of yourself, you're moving into a new neighborhood. You're not sure, you've never lived there, you're not sure what type of neighborhood it is. So you're out there, you're checking all the data you can find on the internet. You're looking at schools, you're looking at the size of the houses, real estate values and everything, this, that, and everything. But I would also suggest probably the best way in the world to understand what a neighborhood is like is to go down and talk to the people who live there. And that is in fact what we do with our bugs. We deal with them, and through that we are able to get a longer term look at the health of the water and the streams that these bugs are living in. And the reason we can do that is that the bugs we look at, these net spinners and crayfish and everything, the bugs we look at, some are very, very sensitive to pollution, others not so much. And then others can't take it at all. And the fact that you have these different bugs react differently to various forms of pollution gives us the ability to understand what the quality of the water is like. And it was up to the Isaac Walton League. They worked, I think it was with the Virginia Tech, it may have been the University of Virginia. And they took that fact and came up with analysis that if you brought together a large group of bugs, at least 200 bugs, and you were able to identify those bugs and then to see which ones were tolerant, which ones were not, which ones were in the middle. And by comparing the percentages of these tolerant, intolerant, and kind of wishy-washy ones, you could get a very, very good look, a very accurate look at what the water quality of that particular stream was. And that's what we've done. This is the basis of our program, the Benthic program. And what the Isaac Walton people did and their group here, which is the Virginia Save Our Streams, is added that factor, the analysis of the ratio of the bugs in a particular group of bugs you have captured and are looking at, with very rigorous and scientific protocols. This means there is a very strict regulations about how you go out, how you monitor, where you put your screen, how long you rub the stones in front of it, how long you dig, how you take the bugs out and how you count them. It's very, very vigorous because you need that uniformity in the protocols which you're using to do your monitoring. So what you have is a wonderfully complex and very accurate ability to look at the different types of bugs you're finding, combine very rigorous protocols, and you end up with a very, very effective way of judging the quality of the water in a particular stream. And so you take the Benthic, you take our chemical monitoring, add our visual observations, and this provides us with 3 different ways of looking at the quality and deciding on the quality and of the streams we're looking at. Next slide, please. So where are we monitoring? Lori mentioned it. I just want to re-emphasize it. We have been doing Benthic monitoring for 20 years, over 20 years. I've actually looked at data which comes from 2003, in which they were out there and doing the exact same things that I do now and coming up with the different results, but using the same bugs, the same count, the same protocols. And it's absolutely marvelous. And if we can go to the next slide, here's a more historic look at what's going on, where we've been doing some of our monitoring. We saw a list, Lori put a list up there of the ones we're doing right now, but it's always changing. And like all organizations, especially volunteer agency organizations like ours, we've had a difficult time during COVID. We've lost some monitors. We're trying to get new monitors. We're trying to reestablish some of our monitoring sites. It's been a challenge, but you can see from this map where we have been doing most of our monitoring. And then you see up there, Leesburg, and we'll be talking to Amy's going to talk about what LWC is doing up in their neck of the woods. We have the next slide, please. So the data we produce from our Benthic monitoring is all submitted to the VA, to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ. And what this data does, it helps the DEQ to detect potential threats to the Goose Creek, Goose Creek. It allows them to measure and analyze the quality of the water in the Goose Creek, to point out potential threats to that. And if there are serious threats, it allows for remedial action to be taking place, to be instituted. So this is incredibly important in the fight to preserve the quality of the Goose Creek watershed. Our data also, we also use our data in-house, and Lori mentioned this a bit. She talked about the two report cards we put out. A lot of the Benthic data, a lot of data was based on some of our Benthic readings, and these report cards were important because they were distributed to the public. They both encouraged the public to take more interest in the quality of water of the Goose Creek watershed, and also get a better idea of how it's doing and the threats coming up to it. They were important publications. And finally, I just want to mention again that we have data that goes back 20 years. It's absolutely amazing to have this amount of data. It's really a unique and valuable source of historical data about the Goose Creek watershed. And if we could have the next to the final one. Next slide, please. And this is something that's very important to me and also to the other members of the Goose Creek. Our data is important, and we focus a lot on the data, what it tells you, how we can use this data to alert the public, to engage the public. But I also want to talk about outreach, because we have over the last 20 years had dozens and dozens of people have been monitors, certified monitors who have gone out and done Benthic monitoring. And when we've worked with them, when we've taught them about the monitoring itself, but of course we've also talked to them about stream health, how it can be preserved, the attacks, the threats are coming from pollution and other sources. And so it's important educational outreach to the community. And through these volunteers, and again, there's been dozens and dozens of them, we also reach out to the larger members of our community, talking about conservation, talking about the importance of the Goose Creek water and what the threats are and what we can do about it. Last slide, please. So what's next? We're going to expand. We very much so. We're talking about the expansion of the chemical monitoring program, the Goose Creek Watch. We're also trying to expand our Benthic. We would like to bring on more volunteers, replace some of the ones who have lost during COVID, and to expand the number of sites, and to ultimately, working with the LWC, would love to really have a comprehensive coverage of the entire Goose Creek watershed. We also want to develop a quicker capacity to use Benthic monitors so that we can move quickly if there are indications of a potential threat coming from pollution or something. We can get out there quickly and do Benthic monitoring, possibly in connection with chemical monitoring. So we can have that quick time, very rapid response to potential threats. And finally, what we'd like to do is to integrate our Benthic data and possibly our Benthic monitors more with the chemical program, so that we can combine the data and maybe actually start to combine the volunteers to have them participate more directly in the chemical monitoring program. Very quickly, that's where we stand on the Benthic monitoring program, and later on, be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Next in line is Amy with Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy to talk about their Benthic monitoring program.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Euland. I'm the Stream Monitoring Program Coordinator at Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy. I'm also a VASO certified trainer and monitor. Next slide. So in case you don't know about Loudoun Wildlife, Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy got started in 1995, and our mission is to inspire, motivate, and engage people to protect, preserve, and restore wildlife habitat. And we do that in a variety of ways. We have citizen science programs, including amphibian, bluebird, and stream monitoring programs. We also have butterfly and bird counts. We work for habitat conservation. We have educational programming and field trips. We do conservation advocacy. And we also have an 87-acre parcel of property called JK Black Oak Wildlife Sanctuary. And that's outside of Luckett's. And that's a unique area that has forests and meadows and vernal pools. And this is a great setting for being stewards of the environment, providing educational opportunities and citizen science opportunities. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be speaking specifically about our stream monitoring program, which is composed of 4 main areas. The first one is the Benthic macroinvertebrate surveys. We also have data-driven advocacy work for improving water quality. We also have educational outreach programs, and we're a partner with Isaac Walton League of America's Salt Watch program. And last year, we had 43 volunteers contribute over 1,060 hours of their time. So that was awesome. Next slide, please. So first, I'm going to talk about the Benthic macroinvertebrate surveys. We are currently monitoring 19 different benthic sites around the county, which you can see on the map. And 9 of these sites are located in the Goose Creek watershed. So we have 15 certified monitors on our stream team. And we also incorporate volunteers into our surveys. And part of my job is also to train and certify new monitors, which is how we're able to expand. Like Jeff was talking about, we use VASOS protocols. So we have level 2 data. And we provide the data to VASOS, who does QA, QC, and the approved data from VASOS goes on to DEQ, and then it gets posted on the National Clean Water Hub database. So it's available to the public as well. Next slide, please. So Loudoun Wildlife is contributing to the Goose Creek Watch with their benthic data from 3 sites. These are some pictures of some of our volunteers monitoring at these sites. And we have a site at which Karen was talking about in Round Hill, which is an unnamed tributary to Sleater Lake, which then feeds into the North Fork of the Goose Creek. We also have a site at Tuscarora Creek at the W&OD Trail in Leesburg. And we just established a site on the main stem of the Goose Creek downstream of Riverside Parkway in Lansdowne. Next slide. So I just want to take a minute to talk about data-driven advocacy work. Karen alluded to the project that we are collaborating on with her, and I just wanted to use that as an example. In the spring of last year, our stream team conducted macro surveys upstream and downstream at a stream on our JK Black Oak property. And the downstream section, which we surveyed first, was full of leeches, which is in the left-hand picture, and midges. They're both very tolerant to pollution. That was basically all that was in our sample. So it received an unacceptable rating of 5 out of 12, which is pretty gross. And then we went upstream just a little less than 1/4 of a mile, and we got a completely different sample. There was a much wider diversity of critters, including pollution intolerant macros like beetles and mayflies. And this site received an acceptable rating of 10 out of 12. So in trying to figure out what was going on, we walked up the length of the stream and we discovered that there was an adjacent wastewater treatment plant about halfway in between the 2 sites that was discharging into the stream. So we contacted Friends of the Shenandoah River to collect data about any potential E. coli pollution from that plant. And we learned that the pollution was actually pretty severe. So due to the karst topography of the area, the quality of the stream water actually affects the quality of the drinking water. People there use wells, and it all goes down into the groundwater source. So they could be having contaminated drinking water. And so we applied for and received a grant from the Tides Foundation for $41,000, which will allow us to continue our partnership with Friends of the Shenandoah River to collect E. coli data, and more importantly, to help to secure clean drinking water for the residents in the Luckett's area. So we're really excited about that. Next slide. Okay, we also do educational outreach programs. In the fall, we participated at Goose Creek Association's Fall Festival. We had a joint table with Loudoun Soil and Water, and also Bezos was there. That was a lot of fun. We also do educational talks. I'm giving a talk next weekend at the Russ Library about creek critters. We also go out to streams and do outreach events. We've done many events at Chapman-DeMary Trail and Percival. And that really engages people. They get to see the stream close up and get engaged with the macros and learn how they can get involved. And then finally, I put out a monthly e-newsletter called The Monitor. And this is a collection of events that are volunteer and educational in nature. We also do summaries of our data from our different sites. And we also have a fun feature, which is Macro of the Month. Next slide. And then finally, we are a Salt Watch partner with Isaac Walton League of America. We just started this up, and we're basically collecting sodium chloride data. So sodium chloride is coming from the rock salt or the brine that gets applied to the roads in the winter. We're collecting monthly or winter samples at 14 sites, and 9 of those are in the Goose Creek watershed. And so far this season, 9 volunteers contributed 75 data points, which is great. And unfortunately, we found that 10 of these sites had sodium chloride levels over the elevated threshold of 100 parts per million, or even over the EPA toxicity threshold of 230 parts per million. Some of our sites actually even had over 700. So this data goes back into our data-driven advocacy work, and we're going to take this data and work with local residents and business owners to explain and educate to them how they can use less salt, still be safe, but to help improve the quality of our waterways. So that's all I've got, and I'm going to turn it over to Bill. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Amy. Great presentations. I'm conscious of our time, so I'm going to streamline mine just a bit. But I am Bill Howard, the Executive Director of the Downstream Project. I've been with the project since 2007, and it's just shortly after its inception. And we're really proud of our role in helping launch the Blue Ridge Conservation Alliance. And it's great to see the coalition working to fulfill its mission and strengthening the cooperation among our regional partners, new and old. And welcome aboard to the Goose Creek Association. And we've had the pleasure of working with them over the last 12 to 15 years, including the first video production of their Goose Creek Challenge. I'm going to try to wrap up this collaboration by highlighting a few aspects of this, but first a little bit of background. Last year, we were excited to announce our partnership with the Commons, formerly the Chesapeake Commons, and the National Water Data Collaborative. The goal of the National Water Data Collaborative, now managed by the Commons, is to create universal, streamlined data exchange and visualization through the use of online water monitoring applications and citizen engagement. Downstream's primary role in the Water Data Collaborative is the integration among our partners of a program we developed called Water Watch. At the core of Water Watch are 2 cloud-based applications developed by the Commons, Water Reporter and Field Doc. They're designed to connect watershed groups to their members. When fully implemented, Water Watch helps activate volunteers, measure watershed restoration practices, and alert the public about stream contamination. In support of the Water Data Collaborative, Water Watch integration provides an open source data platform that facilitates information sharing among state and federal agencies and integrates citizen monitoring data into a larger network for integration and analysis. To date, Downstream has successfully added 6 groups into the Water Watch program, including the Goose Creek Association. And at this point, I'd like to change the screen share to a view of the Goose Creek Association website. This landing page is how one gets onboarded to Water Reporter and joining your local watershed, and in this case, the Goose Creek Association. Water Reporter's data manager is a robust cloud-based server that can simply replace a cumbersome or antiquated database. Data are easily uploaded, accessed, and downloaded in whole or in part. Data can be batch processed from spreadsheets or entered manually, and individual readings can be added or edited at the station parameter and reading levels from the desktop or a mobile device. So the Water Reporter application is available on the App Store and on the Google Play Store. Customizable and embeddable maps are easily shared on a partner website. So I will bring up the Water Reporter map. These are the 6 chemical monitoring locations in the Goose Creek watershed. Mousing over these individual delineations, you can see the sub-watersheds of the Goose Creek upper and lower. These diamond shapes are actual real-time feeds from the USGS flow gauges, so that you can look at flow levels. This is relative to what Karen was mentioning about the relationship between concentrations and flow. We use the thresholds to create color indicators of acceptable or unacceptable levels of concentration. Here you can see a station card for Goose Creek downstream of the confluence with the North Fork. Here are the Coli readings updated as of January 20th. And you'll see here a threshold line similar to the graphic that Karen presented. These graphs can be shown in line charts or scatter charts. These individual readings are accessible with a mouse over, and you can see, of course, her last reading of 344 colony forming units. In addition to managing and mapping and sharing of monitoring data, Water Reporter functions as a specialized social media platform for watershed groups and the general public, enabling them to become the eyes of their watershed. The Water Reporter app empowers people to create posts containing geolocated images and comments of general or specific interest, monitored and curated by designated administrators. These posts can be shared in an additional map layer. So if we look at the Water Reporter posts here, you will notice that there are additional icons which show activities along the stream. These again can be used to record the good, the bad, and the ugly. We advocate for a hashtag system. A post with a hashtag can create designated maps filtered by those hashtags. And I'd like to give you, in the very near term, we're going to be adding another layer to the map, which will be the benthic monitoring results focusing primarily on the overall stream health scores and trends. So we'll have another layer here that will overlay with the chemical monitoring sites. I'd like to share with you another successful water reporter integration in support of the Shenandoah Riverkeeper and their Respect the Shenandoah campaign. This will give you a good example of how Water Reporter can be used for anecdotal reports and a specific campaign. In this case, it was called Respect the Shenandoah, and it was documenting harmful algal blooms. And the campaign here has set out to document and geolocate the harmful algal blooms and ultimately use the posts and the images to convince the state to develop a standard for algae and declare the Shenandoah impaired for this, for algae. These individual posts will click through to a larger community map, which shows the detail. It also shows the watershed and comments. It also has a link to a Google map that can give you location and directions to that specific location. And there's some exciting Water Reporter application developments in the works. Best of all, Field Doc and Water Reporter continue to be supported by several major grant funders. And with each new release, subscribers are the beneficiaries of these enhancements at no cost. We're really grateful to the Goose Creek Association for joining in this effort with us. We've taken the first important steps in capturing monitoring data to share with the public with the great work of the Friends of the Shenandoah River. There are many more opportunities and initiatives to come, including documenting their many tree plantings, and we can already see the interest in Goose Creek, in the Goose Creek monitoring program. It's spreading to other organizations interested in protecting the important drinking water source and in this incredibly beautiful natural and recreational resource. Thank you all for your time. I want to leave some time for questions of all of our presenters.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in really quick. That was an amazing presentation, guys. I know there are a lot of hands in the pot right now, but you guys are doing such great work, and it was really inspiring to see it all on screen and kind of just get, that bird's eye view of what work you guys are doing. Bill, that was kind of cool about the Respect the Shenandoah. I live in Shenandoah County and I did not know about that initiative. So that's something I'm going to look into after this program concludes today. But I do have some questions that were sent to me privately that I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys. So let's see, we'll start with Amy and Jeff. How often are benthic sites monitored? Are they monitored on a monthly basis like the chemical sites are, or at a different level?
I'll just jump in there. And basically, Amy and I use the same protocols. We monitor twice a year in the spring and in the fall. But as I was talking about, I think we're also looking into the idea, and Amy mentioned it already, of doing more spot rapid monitoring when there's a need. Amy, anything you would like to add?
No, spring and fall, that's the VASOS protocol, and there's 3 certain months. So you want to try to get your data in for those 3 months.
Great, thank you guys. Next, and this is, I think, just a generic question to the group as a whole, but GCA may be better suited to answer. One question is, how long do you anticipate this program to run? Like, what's the goal, the end goal? Are we going to try and keep this going for the next few years as long as we have grant funding? What's your hopes and dreams moving forward?
We have a short-term objective, which is to restore the Goose Creek to a recreational level. quality from its impaired state. And we're getting pretty impatient. We'd like to do it within 5 years. Okay, so let's say we accomplish that and all aspects of the Goose Creek is at a recreational quality. I think we still will want to have monitoring going on, perhaps not as intensely, but to ensure that it stays that way. We don't want slippage. I actually have a question of Karen Anderson. If the state has done away with that E. coli standard, what replaces it? I mean, what does the state consider to be a bad level of E. coli?
That's a good question. What the state has moved to is you collect data for 9 weeks, one sample a week. And then the standard oh, help me out, Amy. The standard, it's not standard deviation, it's standard STV. Sorry, I just blew, but it's 440 for that 9-week period. If you miss a week, the data, they cannot use that data for assessment purposes. So basically, all they're looking at now is an assessment of the water quality, not a human health standard, but an assessment standard that's at a much higher tolerance level, allowing a higher pollution level than the previous 235.
Great, thank you, Karen. That was also another question that we had lined up too. What is the new standard? So another question, and this is for every organization, if you have folks, or if we have folks who are tuning in today who are interested in volunteering, would the best thing for them to do is just maybe visit your website and reach out that way, or are there certain things they need to do to get in contact with you?
Reach out, we'll grab you, and we have training sessions coming up. Jeff is going to have one, and I'm sure Amy has them. Depends on whose territory you're in as to where you'll be assigned. But and you can't just pick any, your backyard to do your training. We have these sites that are designated. So, we try to send people out, and that's part of the fun, is seeing a new area that you wouldn't otherwise get into without that homeowner's permission.
And I just reinforce it, certainly use more people, more monitors. And I think Amy's the same way. We can always use more monitors. We have a training program coming up in March. If you're interested, please get in touch with us, the Goose Creek Association, or with Amy on the LWC side.
Yep, I would say for Loudoun Wildlife, if you're interested in stream monitoring, just Google Loudoun Wildlife, the monitor, and that'll take you to my newsletter, and you can contact me directly through the email there. In terms of Loudoun Wildlife in general, we have lots of other opportunities. You can go to our volunteer page and submit a volunteer application, and our volunteer coordinator, Kim, will be in touch with you. We'd love to hear from you.
And the same with the Friends of the Shenandoah River. We use volunteers for almost all aspects of our water quality monitoring programs and educational outreach.
Great. Well, thank you guys. I don't have any.
You just muted. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. I don't see any more questions that came in to me privately or on the public chat. So I think we're good, which means we're going to wrap up a little bit early, but just very quickly, I want to say thank you guys again. This has been a really informative presentation, and a lot of work has been put into it. And I know a lot more work is still going to be put into it. And we look forward to seeing what all you discover, and be sure to share with BRCA. We are happy to, promote any programs or trainings that you have coming up to our membership. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And before I end this really quick, our next quarterly session, so the second one of the year, will be our spring session. That is going to be April 21st. That is also a Thursday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. We have yet to choose a location and speaker, but I have someone in mind, and hopefully it'll be outdoors. So fingers crossed, but more information will be coming with that session. So again, thank you guys. And unless we have anything else to go over, I think we're good to sign off.
Thanks, Haley.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for this platform.
Yeah. Thank you guys.